In the chilling Spanish countryside, a family of three, Daniel, a professional renovator, his wife Sarah, and their 9-year-old son Eric moves into an aging house with plans to restore and sell it. However, what begins as a hopeful endeavor quickly takes a sinister turn. Eric starts hearing mysterious whispers that no one else can discern, which his parents initially dismiss as mere imagination stemming from their frequent relocations. As the days pass, Eric's mental state deteriorates. He becomes withdrawn, fearful, and increasingly obsessed with the voices. His drawings reflect disturbing imagery, and he claims that someone speaks to him through static on electronic devices. Daniel and Sarah attempt to comfort him, but their efforts become strained as Eric's behavior worsens. What seems to be psychological distress soon escalates into a haunting reality. Tragedy strikes when Eric dies unexpectedly in a mysterious pool accident, an event that devastates the family. Sarah descends into deep grief, while Daniel is plagued by guilt and confusion, aggravated by a haunting audio recording made just before Eric's death. This recording reveals the eerie whispers Eric had mentioned, igniting Daniel's quest for answers. Determined to uncover the truth behind his son's death, Daniel contacts German Redondo, a noted parapsychologist specializing in electronic voice phenomena. German, though skeptical, agrees to investigate the house accompanied by his adult daughter Ruth. Upon their arrival, both sense an unsettling energy within the house, which feels cold and oppressive. German sets up equipment to record potential supernatural activity. As the investigation proceeds, German captures EVP recordings laced with chilling whispers and disturbing messages directed at Daniel. These voices appear intelligent and show manipulative intent. Meanwhile, Ruth delves into the history of the property and discovers that it was once home to a notorious figure known as the Barbarian, a sadistic man who brutally tortured children in the 17th century. This revelation suggests that a lingering malevolence may still haunt the premises. Amidst the investigation, Sarah becomes increasingly vulnerable, overwhelmed by her grief and the house's sinister influence. She starts witnessing apparitions and experiencing unexplainable supernatural occurrences, causing her mental state to deteriorate rapidly. The line separating reality from illusion blurs, and it becomes evident that the spirits within the house are targeting her next, preying on her emotional fragility. As darkness encroaches on the family, the struggle between the living and the malevolent forces of the past escalates, setting the stage for a chilling confrontation with the supernatural. Daniel, convinced they are confronting a malevolent entity, becomes fixated on uncovering the truth behind the supernatural occurrences. German and Ruth join him in their investigation, employing thermal cameras and sound equipment to track the source of the disturbing spiritual activity. Their efforts lead them to a concealed chamber beneath the house, an ancient torture room filled with dreadful artifacts linked to the legacy of the Barbarian. This grim history serves as a spiritual anchor for the entity that haunts the family. The deeper they dig, the clearer it becomes that the evil presence is not a random haunting. The voices that tormented Eric are revealed to be manipulative, intelligent, and predatory, capable of mimicking familiar voices to confuse and disorient their victims. Utilizing their target's grief and guilt, the entity tightens its hold, turning the house into a twisted maze of fear, illusions, and despair, ensnaring each character in its grasp. Sarah falls victim next, overwhelmed by hallucinations and sinister whispers that drive her to suicide, a tragedy that devastates Daniel. Consumed by guilt and the malevolent influence, Daniel grows increasingly unstable as the entity tightens its grip on him. The power of the house escalates with each act of sorrow and violence, drawing them further into darkness. German, troubled by the escalating supernatural activity and the tragic deaths it has caused, decides to confront the heart of the darkness in a final attempt to destroy it. He believes severing the connection to the Barbarian's enduring legacy could release them from the curse. However, his confrontation results in violent retaliation by the entity, leading to German's demise from unexplained supernatural injuries. Now alone, Ruth strives to continue her father's mission and rescue Daniel from the house's insidious influence. The tension reaches its climax as Daniel, in a fragile psychological and spiritual state, is lured toward an ultimate act of violence. The deceptive voices convince him that death is the only path to reunite with his family. Ruth, realizing the imminent peril, attempts to save him, but her efforts come too late. Daniel, in a tragic final act of desperation, ignites himself within the cursed house, seeking to bring an end to the torment. After these harrowing events, Ruth escapes the house, profoundly altered by the unspeakable horrors she has witnessed. The story concludes with an ambiguous tone. Though silence falls over the house, the whispers have not been entirely eradicated, hinting that the malevolent presence remains, lurking, and ready to prey on those who are vulnerable enough to listen. Don't Listen presents a haunting exploration of grief, guilt, and the insidious forces that exploit human fragility. Employing traditional haunted house elements such as whispers, ghostly apparitions, and a dark history, the film develops into a slow-burn psychological horror that culminates in intense supernatural dread. Its core theme centers on the emotional manipulation stemming from parental grief, particularly the anguish of losing a child. The film incorporates EVP, electronic voice phenomena, as a contemporary tool that firmly connects its supernatural elements to real-world ghost hunting practices. The whispering voices in the film are profoundly unsettling, characterized by their personal nature, each one uniquely tailored to resonate with the individual traumas of the characters. Rather than simply serving as haunting noise, these voices act as a seductive force, enticing the characters toward self-destruction. Central to the narrative are Daniel and Sarah, the parents. Daniel's transformation from a skeptic to a believer unfolds through his deep love for his family and overwhelming guilt, rendering his character arc both tragic and almost predestined. Sarah's emotional vulnerability makes her particularly susceptible to the harrowing experiences, displaying a parallel descent into despair with Daniel. The film shuns clichés of redemption, instead showcasing how unrelenting grief may inadvertently invite ancient malevolence into their lives. The house itself emerges as a pivotal character, embodying generations of trauma and death. Its concealed torture chamber and ominous aura symbolize not just spectral entities but the lasting impact of human cruelty, highlighting unresolved pain that haunts the living. The haunting within the house serves as a metaphor for deeper emotional turmoil, illustrating how such anguish can overwhelm and consume. As the story progresses, the source of terror morphs from visible apparitions and murmured voices into a more substantial implication. Grief can act as a portal to darker forces, suggesting that there are realities waiting, patient and ready to exploit moments of vulnerability. The film posits that once the haunting whispers invade one's mind, it may be an indication that escape is no longer feasible. Set against the backdrop of tranquil Spanish countryside, the narrative follows Daniel, Sarah, and their young son Eric, who move into an old, run-down home with plans to renovate and resell it. Although accustomed to flipping houses, the oppressive atmosphere of their new residence proves unsettling. Amidst the renovation efforts, Eric begins to express fears of whispers and voices that remain unheard by others, prompting his parents to attribute it to childhood imagination or the instability of their itinerant life. As Eric's anxiety intensifies alongside his disturbing drawings and peculiar behavior, Daniel and Sarah wrestle with rational explanations while a darker reality unfurls within their family, leading them to question the presence of supernatural influences affecting their son. Flicker ominously, shadows loom, and the atmosphere becomes thick with dread. As Daniel delves deeper into the investigation, his once rigid skepticism wavers. He experiences a morning in which he feels a chilling presence, heightening his belief that Eric's spirit is attempting to communicate and that there are sinister forces at play. Daniel's obsession leads him to conduct increasingly risky experiments, believing he is on the brink of unearthing the truth behind his brother's death. He confronts German and demands more intense sessions to delve deeper into the house's haunted legacy. German, now more convinced of the house's dark energies, agrees to help and utilizes advanced techniques to push the boundaries of their research. As they explore the cellar, the barbarian's old haunt, Daniel is enveloped by a wave of terrifying visions that reveal fragmented memories of Eric's last moments. The disturbing sounds awaken something within him, compelling him to decipher the cryptic messages that echo in the recordings. The oppressive spirit seems to feed off his guilt and desperation, revealing truths that go beyond mere coincidence. Simultaneously, Ruth dives deeper into the history of the barbarian, tracing local legends and uncovering victims' identities linked to the house. Each revelation deepens the narrative of remorse and malevolence that haunts their investigations. Daniel becomes consumed with the belief that Ezekiel, the entity representing Eric's restless spirit, holds the key not only to their past but also to Sarah's tragic end. With Sarah's death amplifying the house's malevolence, Daniel becomes aware that the supernatural force is not merely a channel for grief but something more sinister that preys on emotional vulnerabilities. He struggles to maintain a grip on reality as the lines blur between the living and the dead. German, sensing the escalating peril, warns Daniel that any further investigation could lead to dire consequences. Yet, driven by love and guilt, Daniel feels compelled to push forward. In the chilling climax, he faces a choice between confronting the dark essence haunting them or surrendering to the malevolent force altogether, hoping to unearth elusive truths while battling the emotions that tether him to his tragic past. Each step made into the darkness brings both revelation and terror, making the quest for answers increasingly perilous as they seek peace for Eric's soul and closure for themselves. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.